Fantastic. All right, welcome back to this week's episode of Curious Faith. So glad that you continue to join us for these conversations for those thinking about following Jesus. We love just to hover around, hopefully topics and conversations that, if you're new to the faith or maybe have left the faith, you find some of the challenges that quite honestly, those of us who have been following Jesus for a long time, we have the same questions. We just don't always admit it. So it's good to do this for us, and thanks for being a part of this. Really excited about our topic tonight. We're going to dive into something that it gets a lot of airplay right now, actually, in certain circles. So I'm glad for us to get a chance to talk about it. I'm going to put on my mask as we're getting close. The vaccines are rolling, but we're still in a little bit of quarantine. So give me just a moment. And there we go. We will welcome in our guests. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi. How are you two?
Quite well, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice day. So
That's a beautiful day out, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I got to enjoy a little bit of the sun, I hope.
Way too much.
Yeah. That's right. I know, yes, speaking only for myself, my pale Norwegian skin will be very crabby at me later on this evening. It'll react negatively, but it was worth it. It was totally worth it. If you would, go ahead and maybe introduce yourselves for our guests who are listening or watching.
I'm Simone Carroll.
Excellent.
And I'm Jan Nessie.
Fantastic. Thanks. A return trip for both of you. Perhaps a third time for you now?
Yeah, wow.
Wow, poor Simone. Simone's on staff, so she kind of has to do this, but that's unlike you. This is also your third time, I think, right, Jane?
This is my third time, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for coming back and for being part of our conversation today. Before we jump into that, I always like to do something that just gives us a chance to get to know each other a little bit. For me, I thought it would be fun. It was just International Women's Day. It's a month where we're really focusing on great women that have had an impact on our society, and I thought maybe we could share that for ourselves. If there were any particular women that had a big impact on you that you wanted to give a shout out here. And I'll begin because, again, I thought of the question, so I can share that first. First, I should say my moms. Thanks, moms. You guys are awesome. And my wife, Sarah, as well. But from a pastoral standpoint, those people that really made an impact on me as a pastor in my particular world, I would say two people. I would say Susan Burrell, who I imagine she was my campus pastor and was just an incredible mentor and incredible role model. And the other one would be you, Jan. And it's one of the reasons why you're here. Thank you so much. It was just a chance for me to be able to say publicly, you were a great influence on me from a ministry standpoint, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's awesome. Yeah. Kind of embarrassing now. Now I don't know what to say.
No. You can't say it back to him, so.
No, that's right.
He's way too young. I was thinking that had specific influence on my path in ministry. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, there was the only woman pastor I ever even heard of.
Wow, yeah.
Her name was Alberta Lundeen, and she was a chaplain at the Deaconess Hospital in Spokane. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if she could do that, I could do this.
Yeah, yeah.
It only took me another, 20 years right. before I actually did it. But she probably was a big influence. But I think, I look at a lot of women, and one of my favorite phrases to some of my male colleagues is, the future is female. And the past has always been female, too. We just haven't recognized it in such a way. But I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg is one of my idols, and I think she's an amazing person, but not specifically influenced my life in that way. There are lots of other women as well. Yeah. That have come down the line. And I should say my mom too, but
yeah. Right, in case she's watching.
Well, she's not.
Right.
I can guarantee it because she died a few years ago. But anyway, that's where I would go.
Very good. Perfect, thanks.
And how about you, Simone?
That was like a harder question than I thought. When you said it, I was like, oh my gosh, my palms are sweating. I don't know who to say. So many great women. Not that
Right.
there's not many to pick out of. I don't know. The first two that popped in my head were, first, Emma Watson, because, Harry
She
Potter.
really is amazing.
She's awesome.
She is
like,
such,
she's just a good human.
Yeah.
And love her. Ministry standpoint, Reese Sky.
Ugh, she's
Love her.
incredible. Totally
Heard
agree.
her talk in Jesus Collective, got to converse with her a bit. Just really amazing things to say. Love her viewpoints on everything. She's just so positive.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my math professor, Rochelle Ankney, shout out. She was awesome and just had like belief in all her students and made me want to be a teacher like that.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Love hearing that. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate hearing that. And yeah, looking forward to what we're going to jump into today. Our question for today is, what do we do with the 10 Commandments? What do we do with the 10 Commandments? And so anybody listening or watching, if you didn't grow up in the church, I feel like that's still something that everyone knows in the back of their heads, right? We've got this picture of Moses coming down the mountain holding these 2 tablets, these 10 Commandments. Honestly, it's kind of one of those silly things, how many people actually know the 10 Commandments? How many people might know them in order? How many people know that there's different ways to number the 10 Commandments? I mean, it's one of those things. I think that we in the church assume people know, and we assume people outside of the church know. But I think there's a lot of questions around, do we know them? What do we think about them? And what do we do with them in our day today? So, just kind of look forward to jumping in on that there. So, I suppose to begin, as you think of the 10 Commandments, do you think positively about them, or do you think negatively about them? I'd be curious, just even from that standpoint. Like, what would your initial reaction be to those?
And that's an interesting thing because I tend not to think about them very much.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things, they're there.
Yep.
And when you said, can you say them in order? Can you say all of them? Given enough time and a piece of paper, I could probably do it. But it's not something that I think about all the time. And when I do sit down and study them,
Yes.
I'm usually interpreting as I go. And
Sure.
I think there are a lot of things in the 10 Commandments that have been watered down. I don't think watered down's quite, but they're kind of put into a meme.
Yes.
And
yes.
so so you get it as sort of everybody knows this, or this is the way it is, and,
Yep.
and there's no nuance to it. But I think there's a lot of nuance in it. So I don't think about them unless I'm sitting down to study them for some reason.
No, I'm with you, and I've called it mic drop culture. Where we say something with the mic drop, and how can you possibly respond to that whatsoever? I think, yes, the 10 Commandments are often used within that format, right? Well, boom. And again, so much of our society is struggling because we have an inability to have any type of nuanced discussion around all kinds of stuff.
Right.
The reality of the 10 Commandments, again, I think most of us who grew up in the church in particular, we would see those as mic drops. Well, there's nothing more to discuss unless you've spent a little time really looking at them, and then you're like, what?
Well,
Now that you say that,
there's
there's a lot to
there's
discuss.
a lot of nuance to it, and a lot of. I mean, you just have to look at when it was given to the people when Moses came down the mountain. This wasn't news to them.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not. There was nothing new in it. It's just that you should be doing this.
Yeah.
And so it was God's way of saying, if you're going to live as people, you have to live together.
Yeah.
And here's some rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to say, here's some guidelines, but that I'd get in big trouble if I say that. So here's some rules about how to live together.
Yeah.
But again, they weren't, first of all, they weren't written in English, so you can't drop the mic on them.
Yeah.
And you have to look at what's behind each one of them.
What's going on there? Yeah. So, I'm sorry, didn't I get a chance for you to jump in? Positive view, negative view, any view whatsoever? Like, yeah, how does it land with you?
I think it's, again, I don't really think about them too often, but kind of a neutral view, I guess, when I do think about it, just like, those are what they are. They're not bad guidelines to follow. If I follow these, like, I'm probably being a decent human because I'm following them, so it's nice to follow them. I just think, like, the only negative side to it is if I see it as if I break a commandment, then God hates me, which isn't true.
Just to be clear. Right out there.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
Based on what I've learned about, like, the new covenant, just like God's heart and just how much he forgives and everything, I think that's the only negative side I see to it is like the punishment side or whatnot.
Good stuff. Well, and you threw something in there that again, I want to figure out how we talk about this in a way that that hopefully everyone's going to be able to engage with us. This idea of a new covenant and an old covenant. And that's one of the challenges of the modern Christian church. And something that a particular author and pastor and speaker just does a really good job of navigating that in terms of his language. I think Andy Stanley talks about that, this new covenant and this old covenant, and how we are called, for those of us who are Jesus followers, to follow the new covenant. And one of the things as he's done is he's talked about that, is he's talked about this idea that therefore we unhitch our faith from what we call the Old Testament. Our Bible is divided up into two sections of those 66 books. One we call the Old Testament, those first 39 books. And it's not that he's dismissing it. It's not saying, we only look at stuff out of the New Testament. But he uses this language, and he does so in a way that, again, for those of us who grew up within the church, and let's kind of name some culture as well, he's doing this in a Southern Baptist environment. Which has, I would say, a very high view of the Old Testament and of the Ten Commandments in particular. He says that in a way that people hear, wait, so does that mean that we aren't supposed to follow the Ten Commandments? And I think, again, not to necessarily speak for him, I think his argument would be, yes, we aren't supposed to because they are part of the Old Covenant. We would follow them because of what Jesus calls us to do and how Jesus calls us to live. But we don't follow them because we aren't bound by those rules from that standpoint. And it's a fascinating little conversation there. And I got to tell you, as someone who's grown up at the church and has studied these and done this for a while, I don't know necessarily how to respond. Like I'm torn with all this. And I thought, so for that, it'd be fun for us to just kick around and talk a little bit.
I think that's kind of, I see where he's coming from on that, to go from the Old Covenant to the New Covenant.
Yeah.
That you don't do it because you're not under the Old Covenant.
Yeah.
But you do them anyway because that's the way Jesus said to live anyway.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm going to be a little heretical here and go off on another tangent.
Yeah.
But when you look at the whole continuum from the creation on, what you see is God creating the world, and then sin enters the world, and then there's all of these attempts through the prophets, through all kinds of things that happen in the Old Testament, God trying to call people back to live together. And finally, and it says, and in these last days, Jesus comes on the scene.
Yeah.
And I like to think of it in terms of Jesus in relationship to the whole created order. From going back from before the Old Testament time, the whole created order, and how human beings came up into being somewhere in Africa. And as the continents shifted and as people needed more land so that they could survive, they kept spreading out, and then they became very tribal and were usually against each other, and eventually Jesus came on the scene and he says, look at, there's no more places you can go. You have to get along. You're all one tribe. You're all one tribe, and here's how you get along.
Yeah.
Having no other gods before me, which is the first of the commandments, is not God being a narcissist. It's God saying, this is the way you live together as human beings. So I see it more as a continuum, and maybe I'm just saying it a different way than he would say it. But we're not following the old covenant because it's the old covenant. We're following it because it's also the new covenant.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I kind of see that in a similar way too. How I think about it is like, and don't quote me on this. I haven't studied theology or anything. But how I see it is that, God is our Father, and how when you're a father, you give your little kids rules to follow as they're growing up. Don't lie, don't, cross the street without looking both ways, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's very good.
You give your child all these rules to follow, and then as they're older, they get to learn like the reasoning behind those rules. And I think that the next step for us in the new covenant was like, oh, we're doing this because we're supposed to love our neighbor and like love our God, and treat each other with dignity, and everything falls into those commandments because of that. So how I see it is that he was giving us these rules so that we're kind of catching our footing. We have something to go back to if we're unsure, and then we're supposed to see it through the lens of Jesus and how he preached, look back on those and be able to just do it on our own without having to refer to the commandments. Now it's in our hearts, and we can practice how to do that.
I like that. I like that because that is kind of what I was saying. The new covenant is the old covenant, and the Pharisee said, which is the greatest commandment?
Yep.
Love your neighbor, love your Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like it, which means it is the same as love your neighbor as yourself. And that's what all the 10 commandments are about, loving your neighbor. And there's none in there that are about you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, when I've taught this typically with younger kids, when we look at the 10 Commandments, we don't spend a ton of time on there. We jump to, again, that what Scott McKnight calls the Jesus Creed, Jesus summing up all of the laws within these two. And if we were to recite all 10 Commandments, and we were all to recite the same 10 ones, right? Yeah, it would. Those first couple do fall into that love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. And then the next tablet, as it's often talked about, the next set of commandments within that 10 is about, how do we love our neighbor? By not lying, by not stealing, by not murdering, by honoring within boundaries. Like all those things like that. Like that's how we do it. That makes, for me, again, as a parent, as a pastor, as a teacher, then what is the value? That's the wrong word. What's the value of then spending time on the 10 Commandments if I naturally just gravitate towards how Jesus teaches them as love God and love neighbor? Does that make sense? Why do we worry about posting the 10 Commandments? Why do we worry about having them somewhere if just in terms of who I am and where I am, like I'm going to gravitate towards how Jesus talked about them anyway? Well,
because I think Simone's right. Sometimes you go like, well, I don't always have a choice between good and evil. Sometimes I have to choose which is the better choice of two evils. So it's good to go back to the 10 Commandments and say, well, okay, so I should not kill my child. I'll just send him to his room. Because, you have to have, sometimes you have to have some specifics. That's probably not a very good example. I'll probably go to jail for it.
For something popped in your head.
But I think you're right. I think it's like, these are basic. And if you're wondering how you love your neighbor, and you still want to, not give food to the food bank, or you still don't know if you should go on that mission trip or whatever. What is loving your neighbor, you know? And like I said, going on a mission trip that's one of those lesser of two evils. Am I supposed to do that, or am I supposed to take care of the neighbor that's right next to me who is sick and I need to take care of? You know, so there's all of those things in there. So yeah, I don't know. I can see where he would, I forget what his name is, tell me his name again.
Andy Stanley.
Yeah. I can see where he would say, you're not under the old covenant, and that's true. And Jesus said that same thing.
Yep.
But he never said, you don't follow the 10 Commandments anymore.
Right. I think it brings me back to the one Bible story where someone's not helping someone who's hurt on the Sabbath, and because they're supposed to be following the commandments,
Right.
and he's like, dude, this person needs your help. I'm going to heal him or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's where it gets to me. Again, that's where I start to struggle, and have always struggled. I'll freely admit, as a pastor, like what I end up doing is, when I go back for the specifics, I go to the ones that I like, and that, that agree with me, and that make sense, and that's the challenge, right? I can't just do that. I can't just pick out of the 10 the 5 that I like. That I'm supposed to pick all 10. But then if I just pick those 10 and I start to ignore the ones that are around there, who gave me permission to do that? So then don't I have to do all of them? And then don't I end up like the guy who says, well, but that's against my rules. I'm not supposed to do that. And Jesus, is just face palming me, dude, you missed the plot. Like, what? That wasn't at all where you're supposed to go.
Yeah.
I totally understand. I feel, side note, I feel like in America, we feel like everything is a slippery slope. Like if you do this one thing, the only end result is you're going to end up down there. I admit I feel a little slippery slope on this one. That if I start to buy into the commandments, that I end up having to buy into all 600 plus more. I feel that more than I feel many things from a slippery slope standpoint. And I don't know why that, maybe because I don't like them.
Well, I think, the 600 that you're talking about, I don't know if that's Leviticus or the Code of Hammurabi, but it's the same thing. And I can see why you feel like the slippery slope. And that's, part of the curse of being raised in the church is that they've been interpreted for us. This is what this means, and it means you can't do this. A few weeks ago, I was listening to a sermon about the Jesus turning over the tables in the temple and chasing out all of the market people that were selling animals. Yeah. And I said, unfortunately, this always comes up in March when the Girl Scouts want to sell their cookies in the narthex. And so there's always been this rule that you can't sell stuff in the narthex because Jesus turned the tables over.
Right, yeah.
But that isn't what it was about. Right. It wasn't about that at all. They're not selling you sacrificial animals. Right. It was about sacrifice. It wasn't about Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do the mic drop thing. We make it into a meme. We make it into hard and fast, good or evil, right or wrong. And like I said, in my life, I seldom get to choose between right and wrong because then it's easy. Yeah. It's not usually that easy.
Yeah.
So when I was working in an engineering office for a while, and I was a project manager on this one project, and we had to get this project done by the next Monday. And I had one of my engineers was out working, and he had to get his report in for us to get this thing done. But he'd been out for 3 weeks, and he hadn't seen his children who were little. Yeah. And he said, I don't know what to do. I need to go home. I said, go home. In the cosmic order of things, if this is a day late, it's not going to matter. Yeah. Well, that was probably not the right thing according to my boss. Yeah, right. But, in the cosmic order of things, that was the right thing. Yeah. So, I mean, that was like the lesser of two evils. Or the better of two goods. I'm not sure. However it came out, you don't usually get to choose right or wrong.
Yeah.
And that's just the way life is, at least in my life.
I think too, it's just important just not to get caught up in the details, lost. And you can turn the commandments into something with all the different translations. You can turn it into whatever you want it to say, or whatever someone else wants it to say to use it against you, or whatever it may be. And that's when you need to be coming back to just, the new covenant, just what are we supposed to do? Is what I'm using these words to say actually following loving my neighbor, or loving my God?
Yeah.
And I think when we get caught up in the details, that's where we get lost, and where we get the facepalm from Jesus, where he's like, you're missing the point here.
Yeah.
It is that how many years ago it was, but the bracelets that used to say, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you're saying, that's the new covenant. What would Jesus do in this case?
It's so funny, of all the Christian cliches that have run out there, I really do like that one. I really
All the ones, that's the only one that I think, well, that has some value.
Right. Well, that would actually really hit it, I think.
Yeah.
Really, what would Jesus do? Because that matters a whole lot.
Right. Think about if you just go every day at the end of your day and say, did I do that how Jesus would have? If you just keep practicing that, then you'll start to understand all those commandments in a deeper way rather than what's written on the paper.
If I said that before I went to bed every night, I would say, oh, Jesus
Yeah, right.
would never have said those things.
I know. I'm not sure that's how I want to end my day. Oh, man.
I think I should start the day that
Right,
way.
there we go. We have just a little bit of time left. So again, thinking about this, particularly from a context of people that didn't grow up in a church, that aren't Jesus followers, that are trying to figure out all this Jesus stuff, is there a useful way to talk about the Ten Commandments? Or, again, should we just say, maybe probably not? That's maybe conversation 52 instead of conversation 1, or does that help if we present that? I think that's an intriguing question. Is there a way that we can lead with the Ten Commandments in a way that's actually helpful?
No, I think you're right. I think we have often led with it, and if you lead with the law, everybody lives with the law, so that doesn't help. I think you have to lead with the gospel and lead with what Jesus said, what Jesus did, and what Jesus wants. And then it'll lead you back to the Ten Commandments. I mean, I don't, it may be question 52. But if you're only asking one a week, that's still in the first year. I'd put it down there a lot farther.
Yeah, even further. Yeah.
But I'm a slow learner, so.
I agree. I feel like it's definitely a later thing, especially for new Christians or people coming back to it. You don't want to really focus on that because that's not, it's going to take forever to actually understand it. So starting with the basics and starting with also that, those laws before may have meant, oh, if you don't follow these, like, you're going to hell. But now it's not, it's not really like that. That was kind of taken the wrong way. And now we realize, you're not going to go to hell if you lie or whatever. That you ask forgiveness and you have God on your side,
Yeah, I think that's it. Another, freely admit, pet peeve of mine, apart from just the mic drop, is the Bible as weapon. Where we use these things to beat people, to shame people, to do all that. If I'm going to err on one side, I just never want to err on that side. I never want to err on that. Hey, let's tell you how awful you are, and that you're going to go to hell, and that you're going to do all these things because you've broken all this stuff. I don't want to be part of that.
I think that I may have said this once before here, but maybe didn't. That we have a tendency to want to use the Bible to hear grace and salvation for us, and as a way to tell other people what to do.
Yep.
So you can be like me.
Right.
Not, you know,
Right.
and, I mean, seriously, that's what we do. It's used as
Yeah.
a weapon of superiority.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be, and that's maybe a good reason not to start with the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, right there, right? Yeah.
But I think you could start with the Jesus saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the second like it, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Totally. I agree.
Yeah, that's a pretty good place to start. And a good place to end.
And a good place to end.
There we go. Perfect. We'll do that. Man, that was really good. Thanks for that. Fantastic conversation. Enjoyed that. Again, Simone, yes, thank you again, as always, for being a part of this. Always feel I should say, she really does have a choice like that. At least I think so.
Right, I did.
Right.
Yes.
Dan, you too. Thanks for coming out and being a part of this.
Yeah, now I can never say no to you.
I know. That's awesome. Yeah, we do look forward to the next conversation and for you joining us along with that. If you have any feedback on this particular topic, how you grew up with the 10 Commandments, if you completely disagree with us, let us know that. We would love to hear from you as well as we continue just to dive into these conversations together. So thank you, Simone. Thank you, Jan. Thank you to all of our listeners and all of our watchers. And we will see you back here next time on Curious Faith. Bye-bye.